Hello everybody, this is my brand new Ruger 1022. We're going to go over this whole video on a review of the gun, how it shoots, the flaws with it, the best ammunition to use with it, different optics you can use with it, and of course going around shooting it and see how it performs, and then go over a disassembly, cleaning, and reassembly. So an overall good video to see how the gun performs, how to disassemble it, and see what's best and what's the gimmicks with it. So here we go. Also, you can get a choice of having a wooden one, or if you want a plastic gun, it's really your choice. It'll come in black or this wooden. I got the wooden because I'm gonna sand it down and stain it my own color. But again, personal preference, and not one doesn't perform really better than the other. Completely up to you. And also about magazine fitment. Of course, the rotary magazine it comes with fits in pretty well. You'll have it basically come in and it slips in pretty fine. There's no magazine at all. You can see it's just tucked in there. Press forward and it'll come right out. Sometimes with like a Pro Mag like this, it's kind of hard to get in there. Most of the time you have to get a good view here, force it in, and it's in, and it does wiggle a little bit. And there are videos, and we'll go over how to get a wiggle gun, but it does feed just fine. And then you have your actual Ruger magazine, which also fits in pretty dang easily right then and there. So out of all the ones that fit the best and don't wiggle, it's gonna be the Rugers, because, well, they're made by the company who makes the gun. So again, hitting on the magazines again, heavily recommend the Rugers. Even though they're expensive, it's worth it at the end of the day. Entirely do the magazine. So I went to Bass Pro and they had these Ruger magazines, but they are kind of expensive, especially if you get the two magazines in one. They cost around 65 bucks. So I made the mistake of buying a cheaper magazine, and I had a hard time feeding. It shot great for about 100 rounds, and I tried to modify it and it didn't shoot well. Actually, before I bought this Ruger one, I bought the Pro Mag magazine. I bought two of them, the 32 round magazine, and one of them is fine. This is the one that's fine, and at least it has a metal carrying case around for the ammunition. The other one had a plastic one, which is definitely not going to be the most reliable you can get. The only issue I had with this is the other one I was putting in, and the glue failed and it split the magazine in half, and it broke before I can shoot it. The other issue I have with these Pro Mag 32 round magazines is if you fill it full all the way to 32, it has a hard time feeding. If you fill it around 24 or 25, it feeds and shoots just fine. So it is a little cheaper than the Ruger, but if you want a reliable magazine that's going to feed just fine, I recommend the Ruger's magazine for the actual gun. Whether that be the 10 shot, I think they make it 15, a 20, and a 25. So this is the BX25 ×2, and I've shot a couple 100 rounds out of this, and it has no problem. It comes with a little carrying case out of here, so you just flip it on each side, and I've never had a problem with this. The biggest tip I can give is just keep your magazines oiled and clean. So whether you put WD-40 down here and brush it, make sure they're nice and clean so they feed just fine. And also, of course, make sure your gun's clean. So be aware of the magazines, and a lot of times people file it down, makes it feed a little bit better. Sometimes it's a spring issue, whatever it be. But the best thing you can do is probably go ahead and buy the Ruger magazines for the Ruger 1022. Now, talking about the optics. So the optic I have on here now is a Vortex Crossfire 2 618x44. So it's a pretty zoomy rifle, and I have the sunshade, so that's why it looks gigantic on it. I have a lot of 22 rifles for many applications, so this one I wanted for a longer distance 22. Of course, I'm not going to shoot this thing 200 yards, but I'd like to be able to pluck off things from 100 yards away pretty easily. So that's why I chose this optic. If you want to use just the iron sights, go ahead and use just the iron sights. If you want a red dot, go ahead and get a red dot. It's really personal preference. I do like this optic. It sights in really well, easily, and you can't go wrong with Vortex. The iron sights on it are kinda not the best in my opinion. They do flip up here, so your rear one will flip up and you can adjust it just with a knife or a flathead and go from there. I personally don't recommend them. I like having optic on these guns, especially if you're gonna go a little bit distance shooting with the 22. The bullet does drop pretty quick. So definitely get an optic. What optic will that be? It's your choice, whether it be ACOG, red dot, or scope. It's completely up to you. Now, speaking about ammunition, really honestly, doesn't really matter too much. Personally, I shoot a lot of herders, which is made by Winchester. So these two rounds are the exact same, 36 grain, 1280 foot per second, 22 long rifle. You can also get almost any other FMJ, I guess these are hollow point, but any other copper plated, I should say, round that works pretty dang well, including the Remington. You'll find these at Bass Pro as well for pretty cheap. I think it's 1,400 rounds and you get it for about 140 bucks, which is not a bad price, especially right now. They all shoot super well. What I personally don't shoot out of any of my 22s is typically these lead tipped. They shoot a little dirtier, so your gun will be a little bit more dirty compared to a normal copper tipped bullet. But no matter what, a 22 does shoot a little dirty anyway, so it's important to keep your gun clean. There is some wax plated ammunition that can gum up your rifle, but if you typically stick to the better brands, especially with being it's so cheap to buy it, I'm pretty sure I get the 333 boxes for about 20 bucks, the 500 boxes of herders for around 30 to 35 bucks, and the 1,400 for about 140 bucks. So you're paying less than 10 cents a bullet, and it's a good ammunition, so it's kind of worth it at the end of the day. These are also pretty good. They're a little bit slower because the bullet's a little bit bigger, but I've never had an issue shooting out of it. So if this is also at your gun store or online, you can find it for cheap, go ahead and buy it. The next step now, I'm gonna go out, shoot a little bit to show you guys how it shoots. After that, we'll disassemble it, show you the best way to clean it, how to disassemble it, and then reassemble it. It's super simple, and it'll be really quick. Now notice while I'm shooting here, every single round feeds perfectly, every round fires. I put 20 in each mag when it can fit 25 because I store it with 20, and all 40 shots went perfectly fine. I'll show you the results of the target here after this mag gets finished, and I'm going to show you the results how I did with the Pro Mag, and even the rotary mag had an issue as well. But this BX25 magazine's legit, it does perfectly fine. Little rapid fire, not too bad from about 20 yards. Now this is the Pro Mag 32 round magazine. I put 25 in here that's how I store it. And you'll see many not jams because they feed just fine, but just misfires. The actual striker is not hitting the back of the bullet in the correct place. And I think this is the magazine fault. It's not feeding it, the spring's not pushing up enough or too much, and it's missing it. This is not an issue you'll find with the Ruger magazines, but the Pro Mag, you'll constantly have this issue as you see me having here. Now next up, we're doing the 10 round rotary magazine. This typically has never given me an issue. Besides the last round or two, it did give me a slight issue. It fed just fine, but the striker missed again. But with the BX25 mag, which I shot actually last in order, it shot perfectly fine. So just think, look out, a lot of magazine issues with this gun. So we shot the gun, we saw how it performed on all the magazines, but you see how dirty 22 can really get. So we literally shot 10 rounds out of this magazine, and you can see it's nice and dirty. This magazine, again, shot 10 rounds out of 25 rounds. Nice and dirty. Same here. Shot 20 rounds each side, and it's dirty. And this is nice brass cased ammo. Even when shooting the Remington, it does the same thing. Shooting the Winchester, herders, whatever. 22 is just kind of a dirty round. So my overall recommendation magazine is get the BX25. If you don't want a 25 round magazine, I'm pretty sure they make a 15 round magazine. Go ahead and get that. Or use the rotary and make sure it's clean. And I'll show you how to clean the magazines, clean the gun, and continually oil these things up and make sure they're in good shape, because obviously you saw there in the video, they can give issues. The Pro Mag, I'm not gonna plan to really ever use this again. The first one I had to split in half, and you saw me having to put new rounds in it 4 or 5 times in just 25 rounds, so it's not really worth it. So I don't recommend that. Just stick with Ruger. So we shot the gun, we saw how it performed on all the magazines, but you see how dirty 22 can really get. So we literally shot 10 rounds out of this magazine, and you can see it's nice and dirty. This magazine, again, shot 10 rounds out of 25 rounds. Nice and dirty. Same here, shot 20 rounds each side, and it's dirty. And this is nice brass cased ammo. Even when shooting the Remington, it does the same thing. Shooting the Winchester, Herders, whatever. 22 is just kind of a dirty round. So my overall recommendation magazine is get the BX25. If you don't want a 25 round magazine, I'm pretty sure they make a 15 round magazine. Go ahead and get that. Or use the rotary and make sure it's clean. And I'll show you how to clean the magazines, clean the gun, and continually oil these things up and make sure they're in good shape, because obviously you saw there in the video, they can give issues. The Pro Mag, I'm not gonna plan to really ever use this again. The first one I had to split in half, and you saw me having to put new rounds in it 4 or 5 times in just 25 rounds, so it's not really worth it. So I don't recommend that. Just stick with Ruger. So for disassembly, you're just gonna need an Allen wrench. Your size is going to be 5/32. That's gonna be the size of your Allen wrench. When it comes to this one right here, you do want to unscrew it, but not out all the way, so you don't actually take the bolt out. It's not meant to come out all the way. I don't even know if you can take it out all the way without even, trying. It's just meant to stay in, but make sure it's all the way loose from the gun, but it stays in the actual stock itself. So we'll unscrew this, make sure it doesn't come out all the way. There you go. And then on the other side here, we'll flip the gun, and we have another same size for the Allen wrench to loosen this up. So we'll go ahead and loosen this. Or this might be a different size. This is a different size. So let's go one size smaller. So we'll go one size smaller to 9/64. And then that should fit right inside. There we go, fits right inside. And then all you gotta do, loosen that until it comes completely loose. I do it until it comes out. There you go. This should pop out, these two, and this will just slide right forward, as shown. So put your parts to the side. So now, this is loose, that's loose. This whole upper should come out, but always make sure this safety is in the middle, because it can damage your stock. So it's right there in the middle, and it actually comes right apart. There you go. So the whole stock is completely away from the gun. Put that to the side here. So now you have your upper. So from here, you have to take out some pins. And I know the first time I had to take these pins out, they were super hard, but now, as you just saw, they fall out, which is really useful and helpful, because I literally had to hammer them out the first time I did this. So that's one of the pins you gotta take out. The other two are right here and right here. Also be careful, these little pins here and here in the trigger assembly will also try to pop out by themselves. So they might fall out, you might have to put them back in. So let me take these out and we'll be right back. So we got the 3 pins out. What I found works also good is just part of your gun cleaning kit, push them out. Once you get them out, this whole trigger assembly should just come right on out. And we'll clean that later. Now you're looking inside your gun, and as you see, it's pretty dirty. This is probably about 400 to 500 rounds in between the cleaning. So about 2 days of shooting. To take this out, you have to get this detach from this spring. So typically you can pull it back, and then you can take this actual metal piece out from the spring by just pulling it up. So all I just did is put a flathead right inside, and I completely disassociated it. And now this quite literally just pops right up. You take the spring out real quick, and then if this is having a hard time, you can also just take it around and just wiggle it out. We got it out. So now you almost have every part disassembled. The spring here, trigger assembly, the pins. Here we go. And we have the two parts. Let's make sure not to lose them. Put them in a case. All right, so now we can take a good look inside the gun. And as we see, it's pretty dirty overall. Like I said, 22s are kind of dirty rounds. So let's start with scrubbing this, and let's rifle and clean the barrel. So I have my setup for the barrel. You only need 2 little links here, and it's well over the size of the barrel. Usually go through it with WD-40 probably about 5 or 10 times until I see, look through it and it looks clean. So we'll get that done real quick. So I just went through the barrel about 10 times with my cleaner, and now you can see the liquid that remains here is pretty dirty. We're gonna brush this out, clean it WD-40, brush it again and dry it up, and go from there. Just got done scrubbing and cleaning, looks much better. That's what the oil looks like once cleaned out. Dried it up, and we will oil it up before we reassemble it. Now looking at the trigger assembly, in order to reassemble this has to be back, but for now I can take this forward, basically wiggle out the actual spring for the actual trigger, or just take it out with your finger, either one. So here's the actual spring for it. Just make sure it's clean. Obviously it's not that dirty at all, it's not coming off my finger. So I'm just gonna oil it up, put it back in, and show you how it is and when you need to reassemble it. So there is a little notch in there that'll sit in, and then all this is floats really in there. You push this back, and now it's set, just like your trigger is. All I will really do, you can WD-40 it, brush it, dry it, and oil it up, and it's ready for reassembly. So we just finished cleaning the bolt assembly. We just, like I said, WD-40, brushed it with a metal brush, dried it up, and we will oil it, of course, before reassembly. We already cleaned up and oiled the trigger assembly, the spring. We'll oil this up. These are nice, pretty been cleaned and oiled already, and we'll put it all back together. Also, the oil I do use is Lucas Oil gun oil, but also you can just use simple engine oil. They both work just fine. You don't have to think anything too hard about oils for your gun. Just as long as it's engine oil or gun oil, it'll work just fine. Especially when you can talk about a simple gun like this one. Now the next step is going to first have your spring against the holder, and you're gonna have to put it back. When you pull this back, sometimes it's hard just to pull it from here with your hand. So you can use a flathead here and your hand here, pull it back. You take your actual bolt assembly, and while it's back, you can push it in and it should snap in right in the notch here. You'll hear it click. Once it's in and the bolt's actually moving by itself like it was before, that means you've done it correctly. So once you have the bolt assembly on the spring, it should just go like a normal gun, back and forth as it should go. And then you're ready to go ahead and put in your trigger assembly and the little pins that go in with it. Again, when you put your trigger assembly back on, make sure this is all the way fired back and this little part is forward. And of course, let's put it in the same way it was in the first place. Let's stick it in, make sure your holes line up, and just put your pins in. All right, once you have your pins in, and make sure these haven't fallen out, go ahead and make sure this all works. So here we go. Oh wait, make sure to save these off. There you go. So the gun's still working, put it back in the stock. Once you put the actual upper back on the stock, let's go ahead, bolt in that bolt and these two. There's a little ridge on this side for the little nut. Tighten them up fairly tight so it doesn't have any chance of falling out or any damage, and also make sure you do not strip these. It's not going to be easy. Again, make sure, of course, empty, easy, works perfectly just fine. Now your Ruger 1022 is clean. Now let's go ahead and clean the magazine. As I previously showed you, pretty good amount of powder and dust on this. Best way to clean it, again, spray a WD-40, brush it, spray it again, lube it up, make sure it's clean. So here's the before, here's the after, just for a quick comparison. That's what it looked like before and after. If you keep them clean, they'll load just fine. And once you're all done, go ahead and you're ready to go ahead and shoot or store away your 1022. Thank you for watching. Any other questions or things I missed, please comment down below and like the video. Everyone have a great day.